Hello, everyone. This is our fourth video in our series on what cells are made of and what they do and what happens inside them. So, today we are going to talk about energy for cells because that's how they're going to do all the things they do. So, let's get right into it. First, we're going to upgrade our understanding of what kind of organisms make their own food and can't make their own food. Right. So on a cellular level or on an organism level, we're going to use these words now instead of producer and consumer. So we're just changing our words around slightly. So in producers, they're going to use photosynthesis to make their own food, and they're going to use a process called cellular respiration to use that food to make cellular energy. Heterotrophs can't make their own food, so they only use cellular respiration to get that energy out of the food that they eat. The process of getting energy out of the food they eat is called metabolism. It's a word you've probably heard before. We usually associate it with our diet, but every organism has a metabolism as they break down mostly sugars to get energy. They're going to use this energy in the form of a chemical called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. We're going to use that word a lot this unit and next unit. So it's definitely one to get down. The molecule itself looks very similar to what is in this model at the top of the diagram on the right side. Make sure that you know the adenine, the base, the ribose, that red sugar, it's not really red, and the green phosphates, which of course are not really green, or circles. Those are groups of molecules themselves. The tri part comes from the fact that there are three phosphates. If we want to get energy back out of ATP, a phosphate group is removed and energy is released that can be used. Now, once that's removed, we don't call it ATP anymore. We call it ADP, adenosine diphosphate. If we want to store energy back into a usable source, we're going to take a phosphate and add it to adenosine diphosphate. That gives us adenosine triphosphate again. It is a cycle. So we're going to talk about plants and how they make their sugars, but they're going to build those sugars around carbon atoms. So where do you think that plants get that carbon from? Do you think they get it from the ground? Do they think you get it from the air? Do you think that they get it from their mom and daddy plants? Give me a sentence. What do you think? Honest opinions. That's all we're looking for. The process of photosynthesis is a synthetic process. It's right in the name. So it's producing something from combining other things. Photo tells you that it uses light energy to do that. So this is the chemical reaction for photosynthesis. I want you to know this chemical reaction this way. From physical science, you should be able to identify the reactants and products as well as all of the elements here, right? But the molecule names are also something I want you to know. Those are in the sentence that's right below it. And let's walk through that together. 6 moles or molecules of carbon dioxide can be added to 6 moles or molecules of water. Add some energy from sunlight, and the plant can produce sugar in the form of glucose, C6H12O6. The byproduct is oxygen. So 6 moles of oxygen are released. On a cellular level, this is what that looks like. The first stage are the light-dependent reactions, where light is absorbed and harnessed through chlorophyll, located in the thylakoid membrane of chloroplasts in plant cells. And they're going to use that energy to convert ADP to ATP, like we just talked about. But they're also going to convert NADP plus to NADPH as they strip the hydrogen out of the water. That leaves oxygen to be released. And this all happens in that thylakoid membrane. In the stroma of the chloroplast, we have something called the light independent reaction or the Calvin cycle. I'm okay if you use either of those words, and I will probably use them interchangeably as well. In the Calvin cycle, we're going to take the energy from the ATP, turning it back into NADP plus, turning it back into ADP. NADPH has the hydrogen removed, turning it back into NADP plus. That hydrogen and energy are used to combine with carbon dioxide from the air. So that's your answer to the question we asked, air. So carbon dioxide gets the hydrogen added to it, and with that sugar being stored now in that carbon-hydrogen-oxygen bond, we get sugar in the form of glucose. Sometimes plants are also going to make fructose and other more complicated sugars. We're just going to stick to glucose for now. This whole process is something called a C3 plant photosynthesis, where they make 3-phosphoglyceric acid as part of that Calvin cycle. I don't need you to worry about that, right? We're going to have this as kind of our complicated process for this section. I would like you to have this diagram in your notes. Probably a good idea to leave 5 or 6 lines of notebook paper to draw this. You don't need to draw it this big as it is on the screen. So with that complex process, just in your brain here, review that, look back at your notes, and I want you to, over here on the side, mark down what are some of the molecules that get recycled during photosynthesis. These are called carrier molecules, and they are not used up. They're always going to be available again. They are not part of the chemical equation. So if a plant is not a C3 plant, it's either a C4 plant or a CAM plant or a couple other different options. We're going to worry about C4 and CAM just a little bit as exceptions that I want you to know. C4 plants live where it's hot and sunny, and they are concerned about water loss. So to prevent water loss, they're going to close their stomata so that water can't evaporate out of their leaves. That's a process called evapotranspiration. But what they do instead is they take that carbon dioxide and in their version of the Calvin cycle, right, they make it into something called 4-phosphoglyceric acid, which is why we call this a C4 plant, not to be confused with the explosive. A couple examples that you might recognize are sugarcane and, of course, we're in Ohio, so corn. These are textbook examples because they live in hot areas and they grow where it is very sunny. CAM plants live in hot areas too, but they struggle with a lack of fresh water differently. So what they do is they use the stored carbon dioxide as a acid called crassulacean acid. Sorry, don't worry, you don't have to say it or spell it. We're just going to keep it as CAM, C-A-M. Right? And they're going to open their stomata at night only to get the carbon dioxide in. That way water can't get out. Right? So they're going to close it at night. And these are things like cacti. You might have heard of orchid plants and pineapples. So we've talked about how cells get energy in through photosynthesis, and they store that as glucose. The next section, we'll talk about how that glucose is used to make a whole lot more ATP by other types of organisms. Plants will do it too, right? But our autotrophs are the only ones that can do photosynthesis. I'll see you in class.